began in the most ordinary of places, a small-town elementary school, where bright murals lined the halls and the scent of crayons clung to the air like a memory of innocence. Castle Heights Elementary sat quietly in Lebanon, Tennessee, a place where parents sent their children with trust, where the community's heartbeat felt steady and familiar. No one could have guessed that within these walls a scandal was quietly taking shape, one that would dismantle careers, shatter reputations, and leave a lingering question about how well we really know the people we place in positions of trust. Officer Brian Gilley was supposed to be a symbol of safety. As a D.A.R.E officer, his role was to inspire children, to guide them away from the dangers of drugs and poor choices. His uniform was a promise, the badge over his heart, a declaration that he was there to protect. Assigned to Castle Heights, he walked the same hallways as the students, exchanged greetings with teachers, and became a fixture in the daily rhythm of the school. Shelby Moss was already part of that rhythm. A teacher with her own classroom, a married woman whose life, at least from the outside, seemed rooted in stability. She greeted students with a smile, stayed late to grade papers, and spoke in the soft, patient tone that makes young children feel safe. On paper, they were both exactly what a school should want: role models, protectors, caretakers. Somewhere between the morning nods in the hallway and the shared laughter over inside jokes, their connection deepened. It didn't happen in one dramatic moment, but rather in a series of small ones. Glances that lingered too long, conversations that stretched past necessity, messages that started as polite and became personal. Soon they were trading affectionate greetings by text, wishing each other good mornings and good nights, sprinkling their words with emojis that betrayed a growing intimacy. Plans were hinted at, outfits discussed, and slowly, the boundaries of professionalism eroded. On August 29, 2024, the quiet affair crossed an invisible line. That day, Gilley's body camera was recording. Whether by accident or design remains unknown. The footage begins harmlessly enough. A student enters Moss's classroom searching for something. Their voices are light, casual. The child finds what they came for and leaves, the door clicking shut behind them. What remains on the recording after that door closes is something very different. Their conversation drifts into personal territory, laughter weaving between their words. There is a hint of secrecy, a playful comment from Moss. "That can be our little secret." It hangs in the air, half a joke, half a truth. She mentions she has to leave soon. He reminds her of her appointment, promising they'll see each other tomorrow. The tone is warm, intimate, almost reluctant to end. Then the blur on the footage lifts. Moss, wearing a t-shirt with the school's name printed across it, steps toward Gilley. They embrace. At first, it's just a kiss, the kind you might see in passing, but they linger. They pull back and smile, then kiss again and again. The laughter is softer now, closer. For a moment, the world outside that classroom, the students, the rules, the uniforms, seems to vanish. Only when Gilley finally says he has to go does the spell break. He steps out into the bright open space of the school, the recording capturing him, walking away from what will soon become the center of an unfolding scandal. If that were all, perhaps it would have been written off as poor judgment, a fleeting lapse. But in September, the affair moved deeper into forbidden territory. After school hours, the two met again, still on school grounds. This time, it went beyond kisses. Both would later admit there was sexual activity. The details remain deliberately vague, but what matters is that it happened there, in a place meant for learning, with the possibility that children were still on campus. Maybe they were in after-school programs, maybe lingering in the gym, maybe walking with their parents just a hallway away. The proximity alone made the act more than a private indiscretion. It made it dangerous. When investigators confronted Gilley, he denied it at first. No sexual contact on duty, he insisted. But the evidence pressed in on him, and eventually the truth slipped out. Yes, there had been a relationship. Yes, something had happened after hours at the school. And yes, it was possible students had been nearby. The Lebanon Police Department moved quickly, launching an internal affairs investigation. It didn't take long to confirm what had happened. The conclusion was damning. Gilley had violated multiple department policies. Worse, he had been dishonest during the investigation. In the world of law enforcement, a lie from an officer isn't just a mistake. It's a fracture in the very foundation of public trust. The consequences were severe. In May 2025, the Tennessee Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission voted to strip Gilley of his certification permanently. He would never serve as a law enforcement officer in the state again. One moment of intimacy in a classroom had cost him a career built over years. Moss's path was different, though no less damaging. She received a 2-day suspension before resigning from the district entirely. The case was sent to the Tennessee State Board of Education, which would decide whether she could ever teach again. Until then, the question of her future remained suspended in uncertainty. Both the school district and the police department released statements, careful in their wording. They stressed that no children had been involved, that the acts were not criminal. They also made clear that the behavior had no place on school grounds. Parents were reassured, policies were referenced, and the promise of a safe and respectful learning environment was repeated like a vow. Yet outside the official reports, the town buzzed with speculation. Should an affair between consenting adults, however ill-placed, be punished this harshly? Or was it not harsh enough? Was the real offense the act itself, or the fact that it happened in a place where children could have walked in at any moment? And in Jilly's case was the lie, that moment when he chose to deny rather than confess, the final nail in the coffin. The questions lingered long after the official decisions were made. For some, it was a story about temptation and poor choices. For others, it was a cautionary tale about trust, how fragile it is and how quickly it can be lost. And for those who had seen the Bodycam footage, there was a haunting awareness that without that accidental recording, none of this might have come to light at all. The aftermath was not loud, not in the way people sometimes imagine a scandal exploding. There were no flashing lights outside homes, no swarm of reporters pressing microphones forward. Instead, it was a quieter unraveling, the kind that happens in offices behind closed doors, in kitchens where spouses sit with arms crossed, in whispered conversations outside the grocery store. For Brian Gilly, the silence was heavy. He had worn the badge for years, taught children to make better choices, preached about consequences. Now every step forward felt like walking against a current that was pulling him under. Friends grew distant. Former colleagues looked at him differently, some with pity, others with something closer to contempt. His uniform, once a shield, now hung in his closet as a reminder of a career abruptly cut short. There was no dramatic arrest, no criminal trial. In the eyes of the law, he had not broken a statute. But in the world he lived in, law enforcement, public trust, he had broken something far more fragile. His name appeared in meeting minutes from the Tennessee Post Commission, a single line recording the vote that ended his career. There was no debate on record, no impassioned speech, just a decision, swift and final. For Shelby Moss, the fall was different. Her exit from the school was quiet, but visible. Parents noticed she wasn't at the car line. Staff saw her desk empty, the nameplate gone from the door. In her absence, a substitute took over her classroom, carefully avoiding questions from curious students who asked when Ms. Moss was coming back. Her 2-day suspension had been a prelude to resignation, a gesture that felt less like punishment and more like the drawing of a line she could not uncross. Whether she stepped away by choice or under pressure, only she knew for certain. But the Board of Education's involvement meant her teaching license now hung in the balance. If the board decided against her, there would be no going back to the profession she had built her life around. The Bodycam footage, though never released to the public, became a kind of whispered ghost in the story. Everyone seemed to have heard about it, few had seen it. But the image of 2 adults, one in uniform, one in a school t-shirt, kissing in a classroom played vividly in the minds of those who talked about the case. It wasn't the explicitness of the act that troubled people most, it was the setting. The brightly colored walls, the small desks, the bookshelves filled with children's stories. The contrast was jarring. Some argued that the punishment was too severe, that people make mistakes and deserve second chances. Others were firm. When you work in a school, when you wear a badge, the rules are not just rules, when they are promises. Break them and the trust is gone. Lebanon community moved forward, as communities do, but the case lingered like an unfinished sentence. It raised questions that didn't have easy answers. Should private relationships between consenting adults always stay private? What happens when those private moments unfold in public spaces? Spaces meant for children, for learning, for safety. And if the affair had never been caught on camera, would anyone have known? Would it have continued? Some saw the story as proof of how technology changes accountability. Without that body cam recording, without those accidental minutes of footage, Jilly's denial might have stood. The meeting in the classroom might have been remembered as nothing more than a casual conversation. But the camera had captured the truth, and once truth is recorded, it's hard to bury it. In the weeks that followed the investigation, Castle Heights Elementary kept going. The morning bell still rang, buses still lined up, teachers still called roll. For the children, life moved on almost unchanged. They might remember Jilly as the officer who came to their school, Moss as the teacher who smiled at them in the hallway. They would not know the full story until years later, if at all. But for the adults, especially those closest to the situation, the story became part of the unspoken history of the school. one of those events that no one officially talks about, but everyone remembers. For Jilly, there was the weight of knowing that a single decision had rewritten his future. For Moss, there was the uncertainty of waiting on the board's verdict, her career in limbo. And for both, there was the reality that in a small town, stories travel fast and stay alive for a long time. The lesson, if there was one, wasn't written in the formal investigation reports or the press statements. It was in the spaces between, in the way trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore, in the way boundaries once crossed are hard to uncross, and in the way moments we think are private can ripple outward in ways we never expect. In the end, there was no dramatic conclusion, no redemption arc neatly tied with a bow, just the quiet, unglamorous reality of consequence. 2 lives changed, 2 careers ended or forever altered, and a reminder to everyone watching from the sidelines that choices made in seconds can leave marks that last for years. Some people in Lebanon will forget. Some already have. But for others, the image will remain. The embrace